Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and you have tuned into the Rebel News live stream panel discussion, at least for the first half of the show, on this, a Friday, August 15th, 2025. I'm David Menzies, and I'm joined by my co-host, Drea Humphrey, as well as, we got some new names today, Rod Giltaca, who is the CEO and Executive Director for the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights, a much-needed organization, in my opinion, and always a delight to have Harrison Faulkner, journalist here in the GTA, back to chat. So, lady and gentlemen, welcome.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Well, right off the hopper, let's go to a man who is very much in the news, and that would be U.S. President Donald Trump. This is a fascinating story, I find, because it is the U.S. State Department. The U.S. State Department, not any organization in Canada, not certainly the Canadian mainstream media, but the U.S. State Department targeting our Online News Act in a human rights report. It says it is taking aim at Canada's Online News Act and a human rights report that criticizes press freedom in Canada, which experts characterized Thursday as Orwellian. And, you know, I got to tell you, I'll start with you, Drea. Just last Saturday, I went down to Detroit to cover the Sean Foyt concert. And, you know, for those who have never been in the region, Detroit, Michigan is but a 1.8 kilometer bridge ride away from Windsor, Ontario. But in terms of freedom, it is night and day. And by that, I mean, here he is in a public park in Motown, no demonstrations, no cancel culture kooks, no people with the mayor's office saying, we got to revoke your permit due to safety issues. And I mean, it's really night and day, I think, between what we have in Canada, increased censorship and control and cancel culture, and what they have in America, which is the beloved First Amendment. Your thoughts, Drea?
Well, it's funny. I was just talking to a friend the other day from California who also lives here and goes back half of the year. And he's like, you know what? Even though California is democratic, it is like our Alberta out there. He says it really doesn't compare. Like Canada is just so far off. But moving back to Sean Foyt, himself, he says he's performed all over the world, including Iraq. And he said he's never faced anything like what he's experiencing simply from being just a social conservative Christian from the US. So very embarrassing. And another thing is he was here in 2023 and 2024. So you're seeing that over the last year, just how much this issue has gotten worse because thousands of people saw him in Coquitlam. I covered that with no real issue. So it's a sign of the times for sure. Before we move on, though, I just want to let people, if they're not familiar with this show at all and they don't know what the Rebel Roundtable is, first of all, welcome. We love that we're having guests and things like that too this time around. But you can also be a part of this show too, and you can also ask our panel guests questions too in a really fun way that helps support our journalism and keep us going. So if you are watching on YouTube, you can do that through Super Chats, and you just donate $5 or more, whatever you want to do to help out. And we read that and it becomes a part of the show. And sometimes you break the news. So that's pretty cool. And if you're watching after the live stream, then you can do a super thanks if you feel so led to. And if you're watching on our friends at Rumble, our free speech defending platform, then you would leave a Rumble rant to do the same. So make sure some of you join in.
Thank you so much for that important information, Dre. You can tell I'm not the money guy here at Rebel News.
I'm not the money girl either.
Just the shoe leather journalist guy. But let's go to you, Rod. I mentioned the First Amendment. I'm sure you hold the Second Amendment near and dear to your heart when it comes to firearm ownership rights. But tell me, you know, the word being bandied about, Orwellian, and I can hear the critics here in Canada scoff, oh, that's an exaggeration. but is it really? I mean, the way we have seen, the government clamp down, first of all, funding their favorites in the media, and then declaring media non grata that are independent because, well, you're not approved media. In 40 years of practicing journalism, I've never heard such claptrap as approved and non-approved media by government. Your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting that anybody would be outraged about a declaration from the U.S. about our war on information here. And I think it's just a symptom of how far it's really the boiling frog, right? Canadians have become so conditioned to this. I mean, you would think that, like, if the Trudeau government had existed, of Justin Trudeau had existed 30 years ago and tried to pay $600 million to the media, like, that would have been the end of their administration. But we've become so conditioned to having to be protected, from information that we don't like, that we'd be outraged at the reality. Like, well, that report is real. It's completely reasonable, and it hits the mark. And I just want to say something about the Sean Feucht thing. I had never heard of Sean Feucht before. Yeah. Never even heard of him. And now he's a household name. Yep. I mean, I see him in my algorithms and on X, and I'm paying attention to what he's saying. Just, it's the Streisand effect in real time. And so that's the optimistic commentary. It's that they try to tar and feather this guy, and it has made him famous in Canada. So good on them.
I could have said it better myself, Rod, and I did bring up that point to Sean. He could barely contain his smile, but I said, you really ought to be sending a thank you card out to various governments in Canada and Antifa and the mainstream media and the Rainbow Mafia and the Islamists, because thousands and thousands of people, who knows what the number is, have made you suddenly a household name. You're getting more donations. You're selling more books and CDs. It's Christmas in August, so I think you're absolutely right. But, Harrison, tell me, especially with you being a journalist, to what Rod said earlier about the whole idea of hundreds of millions of dollars, even, a decade ago, this being unthinkable in terms of journalistic organizations being paid off like that. I can tell you, Harrison, I think I'm the only one at Rebel News who actually went to university for a journalism degree in the early 80s at Ryerson, not called Ryerson anymore, but that's kind of making my point about cancel culture. But here's the deal. Even then, the vast number of professors were left-leaning, 100%. But they would, if they were still around today, well, let's put it this way. Wherever they are, they're rolling in their caskets over this. They never would have gone for this. They used to complain about page 3 being sold for an advertisement because that's the second most important page after page 1. This is how far we've moved. What say you, my friend? Because when I look at it, how can you, without bias, cover an entity that is funding you?
Well, exactly. And I have to say, I am a fellow alumni of the Ryerson journalism program. I didn't know that, David. A perfect example of this, of exactly what we're talking about, is in the reporting of the U.S. State Department's criticism of the Press Freedom Bill. This is from the Canadian Press, by the way. And this is just so bizarre to me. The two professors, which are highlighted in the article, which has been shared by CTV News, which has been shared around by all of the media that actually take government subsidies, these professors are calling what the State Department was doing as Orwellian. So it's like this weird backwards world we're living in. So the media that receives the money from the government that is benefiting from these pieces of legislation, which the State Department are now criticizing as Orwellian, are telling us that really it's the State Department that's Orwellian. I just don't understand what's going on here, really. But that to me is a perfect example of the consequence of the subsidy package, the Online News Act, all of this stuff. And let's just also note the fact that what I found interesting in the State Department piece is that they take issue with the diversity quotas which are promoted in the Online News Act for these subsidy-taking news organizations. That, of course, gets buried at the bottom of the article, but it should have been put right at the top, I think.
No, you know what? You raise a fantastic point. And Harrison, let's be honest. Their narrative, with this Canadian press story, which I think the journalist used to be Stephen Guilbeault's teacher's pet back in the day, one of his favorites. It's MAGA, you see. That's the problem. It's not free speech. It's not First Amendment. These are evil MAGA people behind this. This is how, I guess, colonized mainstream media is in Canada right now.
Well, I won't be able to believe that when Canadians go on Instagram and realize that all the news is blocked, when they go on Facebook and realize they can't access any news anymore, I don't think that the average Canadian goes, "Oh, well, this is good because this is how we fight back against MAGA forces." I think they look at it and go, "This is bizarre. What happened to my news access?" Of course, they're going to try to paint it as some sort of MAGA criticism. And really, you've seen that in the response from the mainstream media to every piece of criticism laid out by the Donald Trump administration towards Canada. It's a lot easier for the mainstream media and for the government to dismiss it as MAGA claims or conspiracy theories if instead of actually just looking at it and saying, well, maybe there's something here. Like maybe there is something about us having an open border that we should protect, or we should deal with the fentanyl crisis. It's not all just MAGA conspiracies, but it's an easy way to dismiss it all, and I think we're going to see more of it.
Drea, why don't we move from the idea of censorship, which is odious, to something that I find doubly egregious, and that is self-censorship. And boy, did we see that play out on the international field the last few days. The Toronto International Film Festival, TIFF, well, they got into a tiff, didn't they? They decided they were going to drop from its program a documentary by a Montreal filmmaker about a grandfather in Israel that rushed to the scene to save his grandkids from the Hamas massacre. And Drea, the most appalling thing of all, which I think is the biggest PR disaster of the year thus far, is that TIFF said, oh, well, it's a copyright issue, you see. I mean, they didn't get the proper clearances. We don't want to be sued by Hamas for copyright infringement. First of all, Drea, are you buying that as the real reason this documentary got dropped?
No, of course not. We see that all the time that this is happening. We get told, we're not being discriminatory. This is the reason it's happening. But again, you pointing out the fact that they're saying we don't want to get sued by Hamas, a terrorist state. It's just like, it's ridiculous. I didn't get a chance to read it because I didn't see it on our schedule. But it also reminds me of just, if I take it back to Sean Foyt, I know that we already talked about it a little bit, but we're seeing the same pattern happen there now, where Kelowna is saying, okay, yeah, he has the right to be here, but hey, we're going to hit you with tens of thousands of dollars in security costs. So they're deflecting over here. Oh, there's a safety issue, as we're seeing across Canada. So this is just what they do to get their politically aligned ideology in place without trying to make it look to the public like they're infringing on our rights to have freedom of expression and have a play like this, which obviously is so important.
Yeah, and thank goodness overnight, there's a twist ending to this sordid saga. They flip-flopped. The documentary will be aired. Rod, tell me, if we were to give TIFF board members and its cowardly president, Cameron Bailey, some truth serum, I think the real reason is they were getting blowback from the pro-Hamas demonstrators who are basically running the city for almost 2 years. They can break laws with impunity. The police do nothing. Well, that's not true. On cold days, they get Timbits and coffee delivered to them. So I can't leave that out of the equation. And I would say there are probably woke anti-Semites on the Toronto International Film Festival board. And the idea of canceling this very important documentary, they're all in on that. What say you, my friend?
Well, I can't claim to be an expert on the conflict in the Middle East, but I am very familiar with the media and the government giving a lot of giving unlimited space to one side of an issue and then choking the other side of the issue, including doing things like this where they're like, well, our biggest concern is copyright infringement. Of course, is ridiculous. And I think for the average observer, because I've looked a lot into obviously this conflict, but most people haven't, and they just get fed what they see, and their diet is actually just headlines and bylines, right? Like that's all they consume. And so it's very easy to lead people. But I would always remind people, if something's being canceled and you have some ridiculous excuse for such a hot button topic being canceled because of potential copyright infringements. I mean, everyone knows Hamas's legal team is extremely active and highly effective. I don't think I need to say more than that. But people do need to look into things a little bit more. And I'm sure everyone is sick and tired of the system lining up behind one side of a cause and basically shutting down the other side. If there's anything that indicates that you're probably not getting the whole story, I would say that would be it.
100%, Rod. And Harrison, I mean, I've reached out to lawyers. They said that, no, this copyright excuse is bogus. Under fair use, you're allowed to use that footage. Let's not also forget that these Hamas terrorists on October 7th, 2023, they mounted GoPro cameras on their helmets. They were filming this. They were gleefully, enjoying the carnage that they were doing in this massacre. They wanted you to share it. They wanted to go far and wide. And one last point, Harrison, if you and I teamed up to do a World War II documentary and we came across, say footage from the Auschwitz death camp, would we need to reach out to the Nazis to get permission to include that in our documentary?
Here's what I find strange about the story, beyond the obvious that TIFF was going to try to censor this film. This exact same thing basically happened last year with a film called Russians at War with TIFF. So what happened was the government, and now the context is slightly different, but TIFF's response has been the same. So the government at first told TIFF to pull the screening for this film, which was a Canadian film that received Canadian public funds, and then TIFF decided, you know what, we're going to listen to that, we're going to pull the film. A day later, they reversed course, said they were going to screen the film, and at these screenings, which took place conveniently right after the festival, there was a massive public protest, series of protests by pro-Ukrainian supporters saying you cannot screen this film. And I was there to cover it, and the protests were actually quite serious. But they went ahead with the screening anyway. That's why when TIFF said last week that they weren't going to screen this film, The Road Between Us, because of A, copyright reasons, which is bogus, and B, because of public pushback and concern, I thought, well, hold on, you guys already went through this last year. So you're not gonna screen this film, but you were gonna screen Russians at War. Of course, like last year, they decided to reverse course, and now they're gonna screen the film. So I just think their PR is a complete disaster. But maybe this is all part of their plan, David. Maybe their whole thing is, if we pull a film and then after some criticism we decide to show it, well, the theaters are going to be packed. Everyone's going to want to watch it. Maybe that's something going on, or maybe they're all just cowards. I can't exactly figure it out.
Well, to Rod's point about Sean Foyt, now suddenly no one who's ever heard of this director or his doc are well versed on it. I would reckon this story has received hundreds of millions of dollars of press coverage around the world. I'm sure people are champing at the bit to actually see this doc, whereas 5 days ago they never even heard about it. So again, the Barbara Streisand effect in full motion. Here's maybe we can go around the panel quickly as an epilogue to this story. It is going to go ahead. I understand August. I'm not sure which date. I better double check that first. But it will be screened. I know as sure as there's salt water in the Pacific Ocean, the Hamas holes, as I like to call them, will be out in full force. And they'll demonstrate, they'll even try to shut it down, mark my words. Here is a test for the Toronto Police Service. Is it business as usual, turning a blind eye and a deaf ear? Or are we going to, as they say in the law enforcement business, whack them and stack them when these reprobates break the law? First to you, Drea, does the show go on, or will it eventually be scrubbed due to that word the left loves these days, safety reasons?
Well, immediately when you're asking that question, I can picture you being handcuffed in Toronto. I mean, it's not funny, but you're okay now. But when you were covering the protests out there and the double treatment we saw, and then not too long after we see Ezra getting handcuffed. So we already know there's probably going to be some donuts served to maybe protesters, and there'll probably be that double treatment that we're used to. And also, I just want to say that we have the Nova Scotia situation, which kind of relates to this, where nobody's allowed in the woods, and all of a sudden the Mi'kmaq is permitted to do their Shakespearean play in the woods. I mean, you can't walk your dog. Somehow that's going to start a fire, but an entire production, as long as it's from the First Nations, is somehow okay. So I'm going to guess there's going to be some sort of two-tiered treatment going on.
Well, I wonder. I really do, Drea, because I think, Rod, the eyes of the world will be on this screening in Toronto. And I think if Toronto's finest once again becomes so many dogs that don't hunt, that they don't uphold the law, it is going to be an enormous black eye. This might be this point where law enforcement fights back, really because they have no choice. What say you?
Well, it's just interesting to me that the decisions that government makes and policymakers make and police forces and all the rest of that stuff. It's, if you look around the world, I mean, just take a look at the UK right now. They've had two-tier treatment of different groups in the country for a long time, and it is at a boiling point. So while this may be a shortcut, I don't know if you call it laziness or apprehension or whatever, that might feel good in the short term, but you're creating such an enormous problem that you're going to have to deal with eventually. It's a wart that's just going to keep on growing, and now you're going to have a really big problem on your hands. And I think Canadians in particular, certainly I am sick and tired of the hypocritical behavior of so many different institutions. I mean, look at where we are, right? Confidence in institutions is at an all-time low, and deservingly so. So, I think all the people that are engaging in this kind of hypocrisy are just creating such a horrible problem that is going to be 10 times, 100 times more difficult to deal with and far more sensitive to deal with down the road. So, yeah, let people see what they want to see. Let filmmakers make films. Give equal audience to everyone, and let people figure it out.
100%, Rod. And if you don't want to see it, don't go, don't tune in. That's how it was in the old days. Now government says, no, we're going to do the critical thinking for you and take choice away. But Harrison, what do you make of what will happen when they screen this film? Because I'm telling you, it's going to be all hands on deck for us to watch this. And, as Drea alluded to, just last year alone, 5 times I was arrested, handcuffed, thrown in a paddy wagon just for practicing journalism. I've seen peaceful counter demonstrators get arrested for the egregious crime of, waving the Canadian flag from across the street, because that further incites the mob. I guess what I'm getting to, Harrison, who's driving this agenda, and how did we get here?
Well, talk about press freedom, right? I mean, I think you've got the perfect story when it comes to whether or not there really is press freedom in Canada. With regards to the screening of the film, I think TIFFs see this as too big of an opportunity to make money off of this. So they're going to make this screening go ahead, no matter what. They're going to pack out the theater and, reap the benefits of their poor PR. Maybe, like I said, maybe it was all intentional. But when it comes to the Toronto police and so many other police forces, I think the reality is that these organizations that we all think of that are supposed to be apolitical have all been drifting towards closer towards politicians. Every one of these organizations is putting out these platitudes and statements to bring themselves closer to politicians, and particularly on the left in Canada. And that's what I think is happening. I don't know if it's one person or if it's several that are driving this, but it's obvious that Canadians view these organizations, the most important being the police that are supposed to protect us, as being a political wing and less of an apolitical organization. So it's really too bad. I don't know the nucleus of it, where it started, but I think most Canadians see that we are drifting towards that two-tier policing model that we're seeing in the UK.
No, I think you nailed it, Harrison. I mean, I once had a conversation with my friend at the Toronto Sun, Joe Warmington, and he told me about the legendary Sun columnist Bob McDonald. And he said, once upon a time, the police chief used to come to one council meeting a year, and that was budget day, because the police have some skin in the game in terms of their budget. Now I understand it, they're there at every meeting. So they have become politicized. And I want to make one thing clear. I think there's a lot of great men and women on the police forces. Even after what's happened to me, the crap I've been through, the crap I've seen others endure, we still back the blue. Without policing, there's anarchy. It's the rule of the jungle. I think the problem is the brass, and it's becoming politicized, and it's being interfered with by politicians above them. In Toronto's case, Olivia Chow. Why don't we move on? Because this is an interesting thing. Drea mentioned the fire situation in Nova Scotia, and I don't know what's in the air in Atlantic Canada, in addition to some bad smoke from those wildfires. But we have the Newfoundland Justice Minister, John Haggie. He was screaming. Do we have a clip of that, Olivia? Let's see what he had to say about those upset with the government's role with the wildfires. And then he dovetailed to COVID. Oh boy, I think he blew his point with that. Let's check it out.
And for those assholes who were on the phone yesterday talking crap to our staff, stop it. You're the same people who trolled us during COVID. And it was unacceptable then, and it's unacceptable now.
No, Minister Higgy. By the way, how much screech did you have before you got on behind the mic there? But no, it was not unacceptable then, nor unacceptable now. Drea, you mentioned what's happening in Nova Scotia. I think of that song, "If you go into the woods today, you're in for a big surprise." Yeah, 28,000 in fines. And I thought in New Brunswick, it was even worse. The premier there said, the reason why we're banning you is that, say you break your leg, which of course happens so frequently when people go for a hike in the woods. All the emergency responders, all the first responders, they're completely occupied with the wildfires. And then, as if we're not listening, she says, "Now, hey folks, if you see your neighbor going into the woods, dial this 1-800 number, and we'll have cops on them so fast, it'll... Well, wait a minute. I thought they were all busy fighting the fires. I mean, like, how are they available for snitch line duty? Your thoughts, Drea?
This takes us right back to 2020 when you were told, don't go see your 80-year-old grandmother because you're going to hurt the healthcare system. If you celebrate a birthday party, if you go to church, all of those types of things, you were told you're a bad person because you are going to overburden the hospitals. And we know that that wasn't true. It was overdoses, if anything, that were impacting the hospital. So we're seeing this again, and you're right, he totally blows his cover. It is the same people. I think there's more of us now because we don't want the same thing that's happening. We all know that these fires are serious, that they're a threat, but we also know that things like fishing and hiking are not what's causing the fires. And again, if you can let a whole play take place and we see that something else is going on here. I shared a picture. This is how much we are going right back to COVID. It's just a picture of me in British Columbia where there is no ban, taking a picture of myself in the woods. If you don't have it, you don't have to put it up. But anyways, People got so mad. I just said, this is me enjoying Crown Land woods in BC. I wrote in BC. And there's people, you know, most people were happy about it, but there are people calling me selfish. And it takes me right back to 2020. I'm selfish in British Columbia for sitting in the forest for what's happening over there. So they're totally drinking the Kool-Aid so fast. And I said, you know, yeah, I'm just as selfish as I was when I wouldn't wear a mask because I knew, A, I wasn't sick and it wasn't stopping anything. So here we are again.
It's unbelievable. I think, Drea, the loony left seeing that photo right now are chanting in unison, lock her up, lock her up.
Like, it's crazy.
you know, Rod, what I think if you're playing the COVID card in 2025, given that what we've learned and continue to learn about how this was mismanaged, the fraud, the idea, 6 feet social distancing, we just made that up. Masking, yeah, we just thought it would look good. We know it has no effect. And yet the justice minister is trotting out COVID as a template of how government got it right, and how dare you echo how we got it wrong then and we're getting it wrong now. What do you make of it?
Well, of course, people in the position that he's in, they continue to just try to gaslight people, right? Like, I'm just going to, you know, run over you with my authority and you're going to comply. And if you think about it in bigger terms, it's there are a lot of people that just want to comply. And it's just a lot easier. They don't want to buck authority. Like, that still works on a lot of people. But I will say, and it's taken probably 30 years to beat Canadians down to the point where the people that are susceptible to this kind of messaging and this psychological pressure, you know, it's taken them this long to get to a point where they will accept this stuff, where you can't hike in the woods because danger, right? And also further to what, you know, how this kind of made its way over to COVID. COVID woke a lot of people up. You know, I mean, we all went through it, right? We're looking around the whole time. I think we're all sort of on the same page here during COVID. And we're all kind of looking around each other to see what we're like. How is this guy going to react? How about them? A lot of people woke up. A lot of people are pushing back. So that's the good news. But COVID also broke a lot of people, like broke them permanently. And I think in some areas of the country, there's almost a bit of a trend there. It's just interesting that people are complying with this. I mean, there is another answer. The answer is that you make people accountable for their own actions and their impact on society. For example, somebody goes into the woods and intentionally starts a fire, put them in jail for 10 years. Put out the fire, put them in jail for 10 years. And you know what? All of a sudden, people won't start fires anymore. If they do it accidentally, they report it, they try to fight it themselves, all the rest of that stuff, right? So I don't know. It's just this really interesting thing. No one is accountable for their actions. It's society as a whole. But I'd like to think, again, to be the optimist, I'd like to think that people are starting to see through this stuff. They're seeing through it on, you know, look at the backlash from it, right? Yeah. And the Sean Floyd thing, and even firearms, like all these different topics. People are starting to go, you know what? I can't trust a thing coming out of any of these people's mouths. So there just has to be more of us out there. And I would like to think that number's growing. And eventually these institutions might turn themselves right, because I don't know what other answer there is.
And you know what, Rod, and I think this is right in your wheelhouse, the vast majority of people going into the woods, and yeah, I agree with campfire bans, not bringing in motorized vehicles. I agree with that. But if you're just hiking, aren't you removing the vast majority of forest users who are ethical, who are not breaking the law? They'll be the eyes and the ears for the fringe arsonists that are trying to cause shenanigans, because it's just like illegal gun owners, isn't it, Rod? You see, yeah, they don't have a license for that restricted weapon, but guess what? They're criminals. It's in their DNA to break the law. An arsonist looking at TV going, oh, well, what am I going to do, boss? They've got a forest ban. I can't go into the woods and set a fire. Isn't that the fallacy of this ban writ large?
Well, it is. And you know, there's a little phenomenon here, and I kind of see it all the time, right? It's overcorrection. It seems like human beings are so prone to overcorrection. It's like, well, we have a forest fire. It's like, nobody can move. Nobody can go in the forest. No, nothing. Yeah. And to be fair, it also appears on the other side, where you have people that are reasonable people. Now they're like, okay, well, there should be no laws whatsoever. So I think it's if we ever want to get out of the situation that I would say a certain demographic of Canadians have put us in, we just got to remain reasonable, and we have to say, you know, just like you did just now, right? It's like, yeah, I get it. Sometimes sparks come out of ATVs and they start fires. Shooting in the bush when it's the dry season, yeah, sometimes that stuff starts fires. So you know what? Maybe calm down on that kind of stuff, and invite people to be part of the solution instead of like, okay, well, I'm going to give you a $25,000 fine, but if you shoot a Toronto City police officer in cold blood, you only got to come up with $500 and you're out. Like, just make it make sense, man. You know, that's my message to everybody in Canada. Make it make sense.
Well, common sense isn't that common anymore, Rod. Harrison, I want to talk about Rod's original point, and I think he nailed it, and that is about how many people, 4 years after COVID got into high gear, are still all about compliance. And, you know, when I see in the summer of 2025, somebody who is by themselves in a vehicle wearing a mask. You know, I liken it to if you see a Sikh gentleman with a turban, if you see a Muslim lady with a hijab, if you see a Christian with a cross, those people are saying, I'm on Team Sikhism, Team Islam, Team Christianity. It's an outward sign of where they stand. I would say that years after those masking mandates had their extinction event, you're still wearing a mask. This is a political statement now. This is people saying, I believe in big government. I believe in big lockdowns. I believe in being told what to do. And I guess the only question is, Harrison, what do you reckon the percentage of Canadians are that, you know, are still such sheep when it comes to this kind of mandate?
I would say that it's probably smaller than we think. I think you and I, we live in Toronto, so there's going to be a higher percentage of them who live in this area. But that being said, I think that the people who are of that political ideology, because it really is its own political ideology now, I think that has come about with some mental. I'm sorry to say it, but I think it's a mental illness, and I feel really bad for people who I think it is this. It's this fear of germs, of getting sick, and it has come about because of what was said to them in the media during COVID. And I genuinely feel bad for them, and I try my best not to judge people who are, wearing gloves or wearing masks, double masking in a car, that sort of thing. And it's not meant to be, I'm not trying to be rude here. I'm just trying to be as honest as I can be. With the wildfires and the forest bans, I don't want to hear from any other person again that these forest fires are the cause of climate change, because these rules, in my opinion, dispel that narrative entirely. Yep. The Nova Scotia government data proves that arson is the main reason for forest fires in the province. I'm sure that Nova Scotia is not an outlier when it comes to forest fires in the Maritimes, that arson is the leading cause for these fires. Now, I also think that these rules have come about, because it is a simple and easy policy prescription, and it's easy for these people in charge, for bureaucrats, premiers, and ministers. Instead of actually doing the hard work, they can just say, well, no one's going to go into the forest. There, that's a rule, and that's going to make it easy for us. The second is that we're living in a low-trust society now. We never used to have these issues. We didn't have people in a large enough quantity going around and lighting the forests on fire in a drought season. But we do now. And why do we have that? Well, I think that's what we should be looking into. This is what I think is the result of living in a low trust society where the government does not trust the citizenry to behave properly, which is wrong. But there might be something to that. And also, it's just quick and easy for these politicians to make a blanket ban and not actually have to do any hard work.
And Harrison, I think that's an excellent point, because I think what we saw during COVID is governments of every level, of every political stripe, they got addicted to the power. It's the ultimate elixir. I mean, we're telling people to wear masks. They're wearing masks. We're telling them to shut down their mom and pop businesses. They're shutting down their mom and pop businesses. We're telling them to stay inside and not have a Christmas party. They're doing it. They couldn't believe the compliance, and it got very addictive. And I think there are politicians that long for what they would think is the good old days. One last thing before we wrap things up here. In terms of your point of mental illness, Harrison, I'll give you my best masking anecdote. And I'm so full of regret I didn't have time to get out of my car and take a picture or shoot a video. I was already late for an assignment. It was on Yonge Street, north of Finch. There was a guy waiting for the bus. He had his mask on. He had cut a slit through his mask so that he could smoke a cigarette. So he is ingesting a carcinogen and in the process making the mask ostensibly useless because it's being ruptured. Yet somehow he thinks this is going to protect him from the COVID cooties. Unbelievable. You know what, folks? It's past the halfway mark, but before we bid adieu, let's find out where we can see and hear and read you. I see, Rod, the logo for CCFR Radio. What's all that about, and how do people follow up with your messaging?
Well, we have a biweekly podcast on YouTube and all the other social media platforms. We also have a nationally broadcast television show on Wild TV as well. So you can find us on the socials or on network television.
Fantastic. And I think you do great work, Rod. So thank you so much for coming on. And Harrison, where can our viewers find your work?
You can find my work on YouTube by searching up my name, Harrison Faulkner. The channel will show up. You'll see some interviews, some ground reporting, with a mix of public opinion and expert analysis weaved into it all.
Fantastic. And I had no idea you were a Ryerson grad as well. Why don't we get together and, plan a caper one day, go back on campus and put the statue of Egerton Ryerson back up just to drive the woke mob absolutely insane.
Now that would be some great content, David.
That might be a hate crime in Mark Carney's Canada now. Who knows? Well, anyways, Rod, Harrison, have a great weekend. I hope you'll come back on the show in the near future. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Drea, that was, I can't believe how fast more than a half hour went by. I think we're overdue for an ad break, and then we'll take it up on the other side. Oh, look at this. Boomers want less immigration. Elbows up.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
Okay, Drea, I beg of you, educate me, because I'm looking at this headline. A new poll reveals that older Canadians, aka the boomers, want fewer legal immigrants to relocate to Canada. the man with the immigration plan that he often cited on the campaign trail was Pierre Poilievre. He was the only one addressing this issue of the major parties. But the boomers, we understand, went with the globalist Mark Carney. I mean, I wonder how many read his book Values. Maybe that might explain why I think so many of them are having buyer's remorse. But Drea, the election was just like 3 months ago. Like, this does not compute for me. Can you explain this?
Well, absolutely. I mean, who voted for Carney? I got to be respectful of my elders, but what the heck is going on? They voted for Carney. This was a huge issue. And you're right, Carney didn't really make it an issue or of such. But just to read some of the stats from the actual poll itself done by Research Co., it says 43% of Canadians believe immigration is having a mostly positive effect. So still a big chunk of us are supportive of it. A smaller portion of Canadians, 39%, think immigration is having a mostly negative effect on the country. So a lot of that I blame is just information. It's where people are getting their information from. A lot of people are totally in the dark of just how much this is not a feasible plan, the way that we're moving forward. And then it says that, I like this, is interesting, it's breakdown by the parties among Canadians who voted in the federal election for the NDP. 59% NDP, or the Liberal Party, 55% believe immigration is having a positive effect on Canada. So within the Liberals, within Carney's party, those voters, it's only 55% that believe that it's having a positive effect. So that seems like, the election wasn't that long ago. What the heck?
100%. And you know what I find incredible, Drea, because I've met these people who have immigrated to Canada legally years or even decades ago, and they're against mass migration, even from people from their old homelands. So let's not put this through the prism of, this is some kind of a racist, mandate, because it's not. And by the way, Drea, just to add more confusion to this, because certainly whoever these older Canadians are, we want less immigration, but yeah, we're voting for Mark Carney. That's even going to bring in Gazans to Canada. That doesn't compute. And yet, what have we seen in the 100+ days since Carney was elected? Nothing. He's going to recognize Palestinian statehood, something he announced right on the tariff deadline date pre-August 1, which he knew would enrage the president. And I think that was his agenda all along. I think Brookfield Asset Management is running the country. I know Carney, most of his assets are U.S. based, the lion's share. So when the U.S. does well, Carney does well. I really believe that's what's going on, because nothing else makes sense. But the point is, in more than 100 days, he has done less than nothing. And yet a poll came out last week showing that his approval rating since April had only dipped 2%, and his disapproval rating is just 27%, which most politicians, if they had, the offer, they'll go, yeah, I'll take that number. That's no problem. Again, Drea, I mean, we keep hearing endless stories of people that are saying, I've got buyer's remorse. Carney seemed like a good idea at the time, and yet the polls don't really reflect that. Just a 2% dip. Again, educate me, because I feel like that little bear with very little brain in its head right now.
Well, you forgot to mention something very important that Mark Carney had time to do, which was, of course, march in the Pride Parade in Vancouver and hug, men in pink G-strings. I mean, that was just top priority. But I think that this boils down to the power of identity politics. And in this case, it's the war against Trumpism, the war against MAGA. And so you have people who voted because they felt like somehow they're voting against Trump, who, of course, remains the president and keeps, extending his power. So people are still on that team. And I think they're they don't see the connection to Carney when it comes to issues that are right here in Canada that are affecting us and everything, every aspect. And you talk about people who were immigrants themselves that come here, and you're absolutely right. I've spoken to many of them, and they are not just happy with how many people are coming. They're not happy with how we are incentivizing people to coming and all of the resources that we're using. And they love telling their stories about how they worked so hard and how they saved so much money and how they paid our country so much money to be here, to start businesses, to operate here. You know, they had two back when we had the $2 bill or whatever, that's all they had left. And so they're looking at like this new wave coming and saying, what the heck is going on? And they're feeling cheated out as well.
And, you know, Drea, something you said right off the top, because I'm trying to understand the lay of the land in Canada, whether we've gone too far, there's no coming back. And that was Carney will march in the Pride Parade. He'll get huggy with a guy that, well, as always, shouldn't be wearing a thong, but is wearing a thong. Does that add to a higher or lower approval rating?
I would say definitely lower. You know, I made a joke, like, I'm so glad we have a leader who's going to be taken seriously now. And what other leaders? We now have two leaders. It's because Trudeau did something very similar with a very young-looking topless woman. Hopefully she was an adult, I'm not sure. But we now have two leaders back to back that think this is professional, think this is okay. You can't even do something like that on the average job. You can't even be like a grocery store attendant. If somebody walked into the grocery store like that, you'd have to kick them out. You'd have to maintain professionalism. And here we have Mark Carney just beaming from ear to ear, hugging a nearly naked man in a G-string. That is Canada. That is the image. That is how seriously we are going to be taken on the international stage.
Well, I think the Liberals think it obviously works for them in terms of good PR. Trudeau never met a Pride Parade he didn't want to go to. And to your other point, Trudeau, yeah, he's always got a thing for a young woman, doesn't he? I mean, right now, the rumor mill tongues are wagging about him as an item with Katy Perry. At least she's of the age of consent last time. I don't know. You think Katy Perry could do better? I mean, like, behind closed doors, Drea, what is that relationship like? Is it firework, or is it, I don't know, the one that got away, somebody done somebody wrong song? What do you think?
I think that I am not mentally capable of going behind closed doors in that relationship. I'm going to I don't even want to think about it. Somebody needs to tell her. Maybe she knows. You know, I no longer really like Hollywood or music or stuff like that. So maybe it's a fitting. Maybe they belong together.
You got it. Well, speaking of the LGBTQIIAPPDD plus community. By the way, that's how the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario want you to refer to. Can we just call it the queer community? And I'm not being derogatory because I know people.
No, because they don't like it. The LGBs don't like when you call them queers.
Oh, well, then I'm lost.
Some of them, anyway. Many of them.
Let's have a contest. Think of something that is under a 15-letter initialgram to describe that community, and there's a steak dinner in it for you. Why don't we throw to Alex Zoltan? He's got a video. It has an LGBT theme to it, and it's right in your backyard in Vancouver. I don't know if this is a prank or if this is real, but why don't we roll it? And I got to hear what you have to say about this whopper, Drea.
And just warning, the R word is said there. So I just want to make sure we know, we don't condone that word. But yeah, you guys got to watch this.
Hi, everybody. I'm at the Bastard Barbecue right now. All my friends are in there. But I guess supposedly since I have wool in my hair, I'm not allowed in. And there's a big voucher thing that they want me to read and sign, and they want to give me, they want to refund my money and not let me in, and I just paid $60 and drove all the way from New West, and I also just drove all the way here from Headley so that I could be here last night and got home at 4 o'clock in the morning, and now I can't get in because of my hair.
It was included in when you bought your ticket. It was included. Our culture appropriation policy was included when you bought your ticket. When you in the description of the event. So it is something that was put out ahead of time. And so I apologize.
I don't really understand. So you're not letting me in because of my hairstyle?
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
if it doesn't align with a culture that
I am Viking. Vikings have dreads.
So
If you want me to go debate everybody in there on whether or not Vikings or Celtic people can have dreadlocks in their hair, I will do it. I will debate your whole freaking system.
I'm not here to debate.
Yeah, but this is retarded. I just drove 5 hours to get here.
Also, even that language, I don't want used in the venue as
Oh
well.
my gosh.
So it's we're having a couple
Hey,
different
Jared,
issues here. We're having cultural
This is my
appropriation
buddy
issue,
right
and
here.
then we're also having an
probably
issue with
okay.
saying
I
English
can't get
language.
Jarek. They won't. I'm filming right now, but they won't let me in because I have dreadlocks.
They what?
They won't let me in because I have dreadlocks.
Oh.
And they're
Gee, Drea, thank goodness I wasn't there wearing my Predator getup that I bring out on Halloween. But you know what? I want to hear what you have to say, but here's my take watching that little discourse. This LGBT, et cetera, community for decades, and sometimes with reason when it came to discrimination in terms of getting housing or employment, they've asked for more understanding, more tolerance, more acceptance. And I think those battles have been fought and won. But now what I see from that community, from the radicals in it, Drea, is this is the most intolerant community that you'll ever come across. These little Gestapo agents telling that woman, who I thought looked very fetching with that hair. I wouldn't even think of, I mean, I don't know anything about, hair and wigs and extensions, but the idea that this is verboten, and these are people, let's not forget, when they have these pride events, break the law by marching in public in front of children, full nudity. This is insane, Drea.
Well, I was so shocked on so many levels. Again, that's Alex Zoltan who shared it. I need to try to find this woman because I'd love to interview her. And like you said, it's in Vancouver, although she drove from hours to get there, to be told that her braid in her hair, she can't get into it. And they said that it goes against that's Basta Barbecue in Vancouver. I had never actually heard of that place until now as well. So it goes against their cultural appropriation policy that they're literally handing out. And this is another example of when, you talk about Newfoundland and the power and how they seize it so quickly. This is what this is. This community has been allowed to get away with so much, so canceling people anytime that they say something that they disagree with. And now you have them just jumping on that, just waiting for someone to come in, appropriating and do this to this poor woman. And of course, as she gets frustrated, she eventually, says a word that some people are offended by, but that's because of the position they put her in too. And then they're like, oh, okay, now you can't come in. But also, I was shocked to find out that there's other companies that have these same types of policies. Probably one of the most well-known companies is Nordstrom, where they're actually saying that you can't do this stuff. I thought this is a human rights violation, for sure, when I saw it. And now I had to do more research. Are people literally allowed to say that if you come in, dressed as a pirate from Pirates of the Caribbean, you're not allowed to come in and have fun at, whatever? Well, so this is another example of the left eating its own. They love to do this.
Yeah, and I think you've given me some insight as to why Nordstrom went out of business last year in Canada, maybe. But cultural appropriation, maybe, just maybe, this is cultural appreciation. I don't know this lady. I don't know what her mandate is, but I would bet my life she isn't there to mock people with that hairdo. And Drea, I'm of Scottish heritage. If somebody wanted to wear a kilt, good on you. I mean, in fact, Idi Amin, when he ruled Uganda, he dressed his troops in kilts. For some reason, he became obsessed with Scottish culture. Hey, listen, you want to march in the Ugandan jungle wearing wool? You're a better man than I. I can't handle that heat. But why do we use that term? cultural appropriation. I don't believe for a second that woman is trying to, take over somebody's culture or to mock a culture. I think she dressed like that because she thinks she looks nice. And I think she looks nice. Where's the problem?
It looked great. And, just yesterday I spoke at the George Jonas Awards for the JCCF, and my topic was actually on the culture war against white people. So when you ask, why is this happening? I ask, who's making it happen? Predominantly, it's actually white people implementing these policies and attacking each other over, which is the most bizarre part about it. It's not usually, and of course there's some that want to capitalize off of, the power they get from it, but it's usually white liberals pushing this stuff, or white socialists, Marxists, whatever you have it, eating their own. And you're right, this is about the intent behind that is clearly that she thought her hair looked better that way. She mentions coming from far, and the best part of that video, I think it's 8 minutes long, but there's a part where she goes, well, can I at least speak to your manager? And they're like, you already spoke to our manager with the purple hair. It's just oh my gosh. But I just want to mention, I don't have a video clip for it, but I saw this skit of this man who dressed up in total traditional Mexican garb. And he walked around in the U.S. in sort of a non-Spanish community and asked, and people were so offended, predominantly white people were saying, oh, this is so wrong, you shouldn't do that. And then he walked down the street that is, I guess, the Spanish community, and they loved it. They were high-fiving him, they were hugging him. And again, it's about the intent. And it's so disgusting to see this. So I'd like to cover this story more in depth. If you're watching and that was you in the video, please get a hold of me at Drea@rebelnews.com. I'm looking for you.
I would love to see that interview. And one last point on so-called cultural appropriation. Drea, what are the rules? How far do we take it? For example, the Wright brothers were first in flight, as the license plates say, hailing their achievement down south. Does that mean that non-whites are not allowed to get on airplanes because that's cultural appropriation? I know it sounds ridiculous, but so's this.
It's so, it all just makes no sense to me. And if you flipped it over and, a black woman's walking in who straightened her hair, can you imagine? It's never going to happen. They're not going to say you can't come in because you straightened your hair, and your hair, you're appropriating. Or maybe you're wearing a wig that's blonde or something. Black women do that all the time. So it's just, enough is enough. People need to just stand for what is accurate. And I think the silent majority of white people who know this is insane. You guys need to start speaking up. You need to remind people that it's not racist to just wear something you want to wear. You need to speak to these issues, because otherwise you're being represented by people like this and policies like this.
You know what, Drea? You raise a fantastic point, and I wish that lady had told those thugs on guard duty, I wish she had asked her, what if a black lady with naturally curly hair straightened it? Yeah. Would she be banned for the same reasons you're banning me? I think it would be a matter of cat got your tongue. Of course it would be a double standard. I'm absolutely certain of that.
Mm-hmm. And then one more thing, they give her back, because she's like, eventually she can have my money. And they give her back $60. And she goes, well, I paid more because I had to pay, I guess, a deposit or something. I don't know. And so you actually owe me more than $60. And they're like, well, you were supposed to do the return online, so we're just doing our best here. They didn't even give her the amount of money she paid. It's just insane.
No, that's appropriation. Financial appropriation. Unbelievable. Drea, we're rapidly running out of time. The one last item that we flagged for the live stream, we have a video. U.S. President Donald Trump says Canada does what we tell them to do. You know what? I don't see a downside there, actually. Let's check this out.
Drug addicts, gang members, drug dealers by the thousands and thousands. 11,888 murderers, half of whom committed more than one murder. They flowed into our country, and for the last 3 months we had none. And I didn't remember when Joe Biden used to always go, I need legislation. I had no legislation. I just said we're closing the borders, and the whole world understood it because they respect your country again. They really respect this country again. They didn't respect it. When he said it, it didn't mean anything. But now they know it meant a lot. And Mexico does what we tell them to do, and Canada does what we tell them to do, because we have the two borders. We have the northern border, southern border, and they were both horrible. But now it's some people say it's a miracle. A drug.
Yeah, but here's the deal, Drea. Mexico actually has a trade deal in place with the U.S. We don't. And I'm sick and tired of the carny apologists saying, how can we deal with that maniacal big bad orange man? He's unhinged. He changes his opinions on an hourly basis. Well, you know what? Dozens and dozens of countries have found a way to deal with them. They've all got trade deals in place. I thought, wasn't that the ostensible policy reason of electing this wheeler dealer banking governor of two nations? He meant business. Well, so far, it looks like an extended vacation. I mean, it's not elbows up, it's knees down. Can you make sense of this for me?
Well, Mexico immediately, I don't want to say fell in line, but they were willing to openly work and come towards a plan, and they worked on their plan when it was about tightening the borders. And you're right, these other jurisdictions have done the same. When he says Canada does what we tell them to, it's like, do we? We do eventually, but we're a little slow at the game, and we don't have the put the citizens first mentality. When they talk about elbows up so you can punch yourself in the face more easily, because it should be Canada first. That's what it actually should be. And if you do that, it doesn't matter if you like your neighboring president. It's not about how much you like him. It's about doing what's best for Canadians. And we are so reluctant to do that eventually we do fall in line, it seems, but we suffer more than we need to in the process.
And, I think, Dre, on the foreign policy front, once again, like Trump 1.0, peace is breaking out all over the planet. Just last week, a deal with Azerbaijan and the Armenians, ending a decades-long conflict. And as we speak, in the hours ahead, I believe, in Alaska, Trump will be meeting with Putin. And my personal feeling on that, this is not going to go well for Ukraine. Zelensky is not at the table. I think and who knows what's going to happen. But I think Ukraine, as Trump told Zelensky many months ago, you don't have any cards. I think Trump will work a deal, perhaps with Putin, and say to Zelensky, take it. And believe me, as I understand, Ukrainians have really soured on Zelensky. I heard one Ukrainian say if he was on fire, I wouldn't even piss on him, to put it out. They're tired of the carnage, the destruction, this war that's been going on, never ending for years. So I think this is very important, what might come of this.
Yeah, well, we're going to watch closely, and hopefully it works out for us.
Unless, of course, at the last minute, the summit is canceled between Trump and the Russian president. It's Kaputin. Anyway.
You just been waiting for that one.
I apologize for that.
We got to get in there. That's all. We just...
Well, and I got to tell you. We're going to
have the last, what do they call that? You love sports, like the last pick. That's what Canada's getting, it almost seems like. The last draft or something.
Oh, yeah, like when you're picking players.
Yeah.
And, you're
getting the last deal, the leftovers.
and I wonder if Trump will make a cheeky joke, because the U.S. purchased Alaska in 1867. And later, 1959, I believe, it became a full state. But anyways, 1867. Something rings a bell about that year. I wonder if Trump will go the 51st state analogy yet again, given the date of Alaska being purchased and, of course, our Dominion being founded on July 1st. Drea, do we have any chats?
Sadly, no.
Oh,
and
what happened?
That's literally what our production team said.
Unbelievable. Well, to use another sports...
I don't know.
Well, to use another sports analogy, it's a shutout. Being an old goaltender, I'd love shutouts, but Not this kind of a shutout.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe people are enjoying what's left of summer. So, Drea, thank you so much for your co-hosting ability, and thank you to our audience for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I will be back next Friday. I can't come on Monday. I've got some court matters to attend to. Yeah, that's what it's like being a journalist from Rebel News. You're in and out of court. Sometimes you're covering the trial. Sometimes you're part of the trial. But that is that's what we're here for, it seems sometimes. So enjoy the summer, enjoy one of the last weekends remaining of summer. We'll see you next Friday. 2 other Rebels will be here on Monday. And as always, folks, stay safe and stay sane.
Bye.
Do you agree with me? It is time to make Canada great again. And that is why we at Rebel News have teamed up with MCGA hats to introduce, well, the fashion sensation of 2025. Oh, and by the way, these beautiful hats, they are made in Canada. We don't rely on cheap imports coming over from China. So what are you waiting for, folks? Show your pride. This is the perfect thing for a patriot to wear, or maybe there's a patriot in your life that you would like to gift such a hat. Please go to mcgahats.ca. That's mcgahats.ca. Don't be shy about it. Wear this cap. Let everybody know you